Very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This TV mic off பண்ணிடு எப்படி சொல்ற டிவில மைக் ஆன் இருக்கா இது சவுண்ட் வருதா இது அவனா அனுச்சு இது தேவையில்லை பதிக்கல ஓகேவா யா Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, very warm welcome to another edition of our evening talk. Today we are trying something technologically new. We are working from our live on and off air. So when you do technology, when you depend on technology, yes, new things, we are trying it out. Now we somehow come out almost 90% of the problem we have come out, 10% is always there. So I think people are logging in and we are also waiting for Mr. Prakash to join. So I'll take this opportunity to tell you what's happening during next 1 week time so that you don't miss this events thing. And once again, very warm welcome to all those you are watching online. I'm offline and we'll be seeing you soon because we got a very, very limited COVID protocols. We have very, very limited numbers of people who are admitted in a 300-seater auditorium. We don't admit more than 75 people. So that's why we have to restrict it. But as the things move by and we don't want to be complacent, I know the COVID incidents are coming down, but we should not take it for granted. At the end of the day, we wanted to be thinking. That's why if you notice it, very good social distancing is maintained here. Between me and the audience is almost 3 meters. Between me and the speakers, a couple of meters. That's why they are permitted to, we are not the mask. Everybody has been checked in terms of the oximeter. And we also checked that the meter, their to link. So many things have been checked so that we make sure not only the people who come to MMA, they come with a lot of confidence and they are safe. And we also wanted to really start people getting, because what we understand, I also read in a nice article this morning that when you have a social connectivity, people are really getting fed up staying at home. When you that social skills are connected when you meet people and interact with them. If you don't do that practice for next 3 to 4 months, 6 months, you lose all your social skill. When you lose your social skill, you stop communicating, you stop interacting with the people. So we don't want that to happen. Maybe that's one of the reasons we thought we'll do this event and we are going on. And coming to the event, what is happening on the 31st of this month, innovative business approaches to beat the COVID times. This is again interesting topic, and because how do you start new businesses, how you take your existing business to the next level is what is going to be discussed. We got 4 outstanding speakers who will be joining us. I think this is guest of honor. Mr. Srikanth Shastri, the chairman of 13G Advisory Network. Then we got Mr. Abhishek Somani, he is the managing director of Somani Ceramics Limited. Then we got Sachin Chabra, founder CEO of Pearl Works, and also Mr. Ajay Jain, promoter MD of Exotech Solution Private Limited. All are outstanding thing who are done exceedingly good work on this space. So join us on 31st. I'll also take a minute to tell you what's happening in November, so that if you missed your inbox, not to join. Warm welcome to you, Anil. Anil, one of our distinguished speakers joining us. Welcome, Anil. Yes. Now, what's happening in November, 1 or 2 events, I'll just briefly tell you what's happening. On the 7th of November, this is again not to be missed event, there is impact on global economy of US elections, because, the US, every action has got direct or indirect impact on Indian economy. And we have got some outstanding panelists again. We have got Tiger Tyagarajan, CEO of Tenpack, Mr. Narayanan, joining from Canada, Kimshika Natarajan, she's from Singapore, she's head of KPMG, and Atul is also, Atul Nerkar is a professor of strategy or entrepreneurship from School of USA, and Kimberly Clark Corporation is a Kimshika. This is happening on the 7th of November. Then again, 12th of November, again we have an interesting event. Our own Ambi is going to be speaking to us on Springboard Back from Rejection. Ambi, along with him, we got Nandini Das and also Vinay Kamath from Hindustan, from Hindu Business Line. And Nandita Dias is, you all know, she is from Lodestar Media. Then on the 17th, we have the Science of Mind Management. Again, interesting event not to be missed. Swami Muktananda is going to be joining us from USA, and he is from Jagat Guru Kripalu Yoga. And this is a second book, what is written, Science of Mind Management, which is very, very essential in the present day environment. Now on 21st, we have entrepreneurial management versus professional management, promotion-led companies versus professional-led companies. Then we have got again galaxy of speakers, Anand Kripalu, MD and DG of Diageo, and Raghavendra Ravi, quite a number of them are there. Intellectual property rights is going to be discussed on 24th. On the 25th, marketing through social media, how the startup can benefit. We got again those 2 outstanding panelists, Anusha Shetty, Chairman and CEO of Grey Group of Companies in India, and also Kritika Balasubramaniam, founder CEO of Stopper. This is what happening in next few days. Coming to today's event, this is a subject which is all most sought after. It's a discussion on the theme of the book, and we already have our distinguished panelists. Get high and how to coach yourself for high performance in your work is the theme what is going to be discussed this evening, and this is the theme of the book authored by Sangeeta, Shankaran, and Sumesh, and we got our distinguished panelists for this evening. Let me warmly welcome each one of them: Mr. V S Parthasarathy, President Executive Board Member of Mahindra and Mahindra; Pavitra Singh, Chief Executive Resource Officer Pepsi; Prakash Iyer, and also Mr. Anil Srinivasan, musician, educator. And the author is, in a short while from now, I will introduce you, each of the speakers. We are waiting for Prakash Iyer. Prakash will be joining us any moment. My team, if Prakash logs in, please let me know. Okay, and bring him to the main page, please. Thank you. Now, coming to this evening, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and also our other board of our social media portals live on webinar. Send your questions. You are getting on the band the mobile number in which you can WhatsApp the number. The authors and all the speakers located different part of the country are kindly agreed to address your concern. And coming to book, Get Launch, How to Coach Yourself for High Performance in Your Work, and authored by Sangeeta, Shankaran, Sumesh, a best-selling author, high-performance business coach. She's not new to MMA. We have done quite a bit of programs in MMA. And MMA is indeed privileged to really host this event. And also, the most important part of this evening is the launch of this book. May I have the launch of the book, How to Coach Yourself for High Performance in Your Workplace. And yes, it's a nice thing. Yes, thank you so much. And this is a must read for each one of you. Now, can I have the audio video, please? There's a video made on the book, and let's have the video. Then afterwards, I'll request the author to say, take it forward. Video, please. Thank you once again. Many congratulations to you, Sangeeta, for the lovely book. Before I hand over the session to Sangeeta, let me have the privilege of introducing and very warm welcome to Prakash. Welcome to you, and Prakash joined us just now. And let me have briefly introduce each of the speakers. Sangeeta, Shankaran, Sumesh. Sangeeta is a chartered accountant, management accountant, and completed executive education for Harvard Business School. And she is also award-leading woman chief financial officer in India. In fact, I'll be briefly telling the profile because the entire profile has already been shared with you. And she is innovator in finance and awarded under Inspiring Authors of India, Outstanding Professional Award by FICCI. Sangeeta is a keynote speaker at many national and international events, forums, and corporates. She is a well-wisher and supporter of MMA. We have been having a number of events. Very warm welcome to Savita. Once again, many congratulations on your new book. Mr. Parthasarathy, Mr. V S Parthasarathy. Partha is a CA chartered accountant from and also Institute of Cost Account India and ICAW, and alumnus of Harvard Business School. And Partha is fondly known as Partha is very president of the mobility service sector, member of the group executive board of Mahindra Group. Partha is also chairman of Mahindra Logistics, and he was also awarded Lifetime Achievement Award for both his CFO and CAO roles by the Business World, Yes Bank Hall of Fame Award, Best CFO of India Award by IMA, and Digital Icon India Award by HPO. Very warm welcome to Partha. It's indeed a pleasure to have you with us. And Mr. Partha has joined us from Mumbai. Then we have Pavitra Singh. And Pavitra Singh, again, not new to MMA. We know her from 50 days from she was there. We used to have a lot of interaction, but not happening now. We'll make sure that it's happening again now. And Pavitra is currently head of HR from Pepsi company, 19 years plus experience, leading a large team of across geographies. Pavitra, prior to joining Pepsi, she had worked with American Express. Then she has also been recognized by the ET Women Hired List of 2016 as one of the corporate India's fastest rising women leaders. Pavitra is an explorer at heart. She loves traveling the world and experiencing different cultures. Very warm welcome to Pavitra. It's indeed a pleasure to have you with us. You are ideally, each one of them are ideally suited for the topic which has been chosen in the book. And Prakash Iyer. What to say about Mr. Prakash Iyer? Prakash Iyer, you all know him, and if he speaks, I will walk miles to listen to him. Prakash is the leadership trainer, author, motivational speaker, and Prakash also started his career with Hindustan Unilever, became a managing director of Kimberly Clark, and he has managed leadership roles in Pepsi and also alumnus of IIM Ahmedabad. Prakash is now the independent director on the board of Xerox India, advisor on multiple Indian corporate houses, served as the CEO of Mumbai India cricket franchisee in the IPL, title winning campaign in the year 2015. Prakash Iyer is the best selling author, motivational speaker, and leadership. I think Mumbai is not doing. I think you can join Chennai Super King. We need somebody to really bring back Chennai Super King to what it was earlier. So very warm welcome to each one of you. You know, our galaxy of distinguished panelists this evening are going to be sharing their insight on one of the most important topic. Now I request Sangeeta, Sumesh. Yes. Yeah. I think when you have a virtual program, often offline, sometimes mix it up. Now, there's a book launch. I will request the distinguished author to present the book to one of the panelists who's here. All others are proxy. The book's already been couriered to you. Will be receiving the book. May I request Sangeeta to please present a copy of the book, please. Yeah. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Now I will request Sangeeta, Shankaran, and Sumesh to take it forward. Over to you, Ms. Sangeeta.
Thank you very much, Group Captain. Before I start, I think I must really congratulate MMA for doing this phenomenal job. Thanks to you, Group Captain, and to the entire MMA team for organizing this. I'm really glad. Thank you. So before I start, mentioning about Get High, I'd like you to take a moment and think. How would you feel when you accomplish a task with speed, efficiency, and finesse? How would you feel when you achieve something that you thought you couldn't achieve? And how would it be if you keep getting consistently better at what you do? I'm sure you'll feel proud, happy, and experience a sense of accomplishment, right? You get a kick and feel high and mighty about your own self, don't you? So when you achieve what you want to achieve, you surely get high. And my friends, that's what this book is all about, Get High, to enable you to get to a higher version of yourself in whatever work that you want to do. It has short stories that you can learn from, tools to coach yourself for high performance, and activities that will enable you to achieve your goals and maximize your growth potential. So why this book? Tell me, who doesn't want high performance? Is there anybody out here who doesn't want high performance? The fact is, everybody wants high performance, be it organizations or individuals. Everyone wants to be a high performer in their domain. So being a coach for high performance, I thought I can contribute as a coach to individual growth on high performance that will result in high profits. I'm on a mission to enable, empower, and elevate businesses and individuals so that they can achieve high performance in what they do. And I believe high performance leads to high profits. Now, the funny thing is most people come up with a sequel, but in my case, I've come with a prequel. My previous book is called What the Finance. It's a national bestseller. And that is on high profits. And now I'm working back, and then, I've come up with this book, Get High. So if I were to kind of summarize the crux of the book, it talks about how to coach yourself for high performance in whatever work that you do. It has keys to the high performance, coaching tools to achieve what you want to achieve. And it does not have any gyan. It has short stories that you can learn from and activities that you can do to get to the high performance levels that you want. And the book has also been endorsed by 2 New York Times bestsellers, Coach Dr. Marshall Goldsmith and Ron Kaufman, and our own Prakash Iyer as well. So before I, head to the panelists, I want to give a contest alert. I'm running 2 contests on Get High. The first is about today's event. The best post on social media about Get High, there'll be a winner from there. And so please tag me. I'm Sangeeta Sumesh on LinkedIn, and Sangsha Sum, that is SANG, which is an abbreviation of my name, on all the other social media platforms. So tag me with the hashtag Get High and tag MMA as well. And the winner will be announced on November 1st. And the second contest is for the people who would like to read the book. So again, do post on social media, tagging me, and what you like the best from the book, or how it has achieved you to get to the high performance levels that you want to. And the winner of that will be announced on November 11th. The winner gets a copy of Get High if it's within India, or if they already have the book, then they get a free coaching session with me. So pay your attention. We have some phenomenal speakers today, and we are going to be talking about different aspects of high performance. And may I just request all the panelists to hold up the book so that, the people who've joined in a little late can, yes, thank you. Thank you so much. Awesome. Right. So like Group Captain introduced, we have amazing speakers, and we are going to be discussing high performance in business, high performance in leadership, high performance in teams, and high performance in talent maximization. Right. So I would like to start with Partha. If you can unmute yourself, please. Yes. So Partha, you are a great industry leader. I'm in awe of you. I admire you for the work that you do. So it'll be great, with your vast and rich experience. Yeah, you're a chartered accountant as well. So you have a phenomenal knowledge on the business side, from the finance angle as well. So what are the main characteristics of a high performance business from your perspective?
Thank you, and delighted to be with you and MMA today. But you said you are in awe with you, but you are saying you are getting high somewhere else, yeah? Okay, so and the other one is like in Tamil, they say Ji Boomba. Is that you say you are Sang Sha Sum? Okay, so all good, very good terminologies, and I think if you can get high on performance, you don't need to get high on anything else. I think so. That's what you are trying to tell through your book, Sangeeta. So coming to the question now, if you look at individual and you I think about it this way: if somebody has vision, he has passion, he has tension, he has attention, and he has immersion, then he will be a great, not just a leader, but also somebody who is high performing. So a vision is something that he's looking forward to. Passion which he brings to, but is also shared. He doesn't create followers, he creates other leaders. Tension, which is stretch goals, creating tension in the ecosystem, and do reviews and thinks about various things in terms of that. Attention is when he doesn't let details go by. So attention to detail, but also attention to people when he cares for them. And therefore, I keep joking, thrilling, pulling, or feeling ke siva life mein hai kya? What is there except for, the genders and the feeling there? So are you doing it? And immersion is, as they say in Tamil, katradu kayalavu, karkadu kadalalavu. So what you have learned is just like what you can hold in your hand, and what you have not learned is like that ocean. If you can keep that kind of maturity and humbleness, then that all creates. But Sangeeta, your point was more towards what will you ask the organization to do? So if I were to convert this into how to do for organization, last time Mahindra asked me this question and I told them as group CFO, there are 5 things that I want you to think about, 5-letter words. And what are they? Yield, climb, unmix, fable, and prime. And what it means is, yield is, what is the company want? What is the yield? Ruthless focus on ROE, ROC, that kind of thing. Climb means if you stay at any place, you are dead. So how fast will you enable the organization to climb? Unmix is, don't make anything complicated. Unmix things. Don't mix up. And therefore, me simple. Don't make complicated. So simplicity. And fable is, are you telling story about what is happening so that people are inspired and the performance goes up? And the last is prime, which is saying there is compliance as a rule book and governance as gospel. If you do all these things on the individual and at the group level, what and how, then you will have high performance, Sangeeta.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Prakash, over to you. So you have vast experience as a leader. You've been a leader. You've now training on leadership. You are a leadership coach. You know everything to do with leadership. So what makes a person a high-performing leader?
You should ask Partha that once again. Yeah? I mean, I just saw his CV. I mean, this is more impressive than I thought. There were some 7 people in that window. Turns out it's one man with all those qualifications. So delighted to see you, Partha. And, you know, so I think if you look at people like Partha or indeed other people who've seen success, I think you'll see a few common threads in there in what they've done. And I think at the heart of it, I think, is the ability to deliver consistent results. And I want to make an emphasis on the point that sometimes you can imagine that, you know, leadership is all about being this nice guy or trying to do the right things for yourself or climbing the corporate ladder. I think a relentless focus on results, and that then means that you take ownership for what's happening, you create a no excuses culture, and you start saying that, hey, how can I be responsible for outcomes? And very often, great leaders will then say it's not outcomes that are easy to do, but our outcomes. How can we stretch and maximize what we can deliver over here? And therefore, good leaders will leverage resources very well, will leverage their people, and will actually enable people to do things they may have never thought was possible, to almost imagine potential that they may have never thought would have existed. And that's really what good leaders will do. So it's not about just what they will do, but what they manage to get their resources to do, what they manage to get their people to do. And at the end of it, what you will find is that you'll see spectacular results consistently. And I'm using consistently because it's not about a flash in the pan. It's not about doing it once in a while. It's about having a process which makes sure you get it right more times than not. You would also have to help people to realize what they were capable of doing. And at the end of it, the people will feel, wow, did I really do it? I can't imagine. I can't believe that I did it. And that's what good leaders will do. They'll make the people better. They'll make the business better. And they'll deliver great outcomes.
Sangeeta, not audible.
Oh, I think you just said it beautifully well. Thanks, Prakash. Over to you, Pavitra. So Pavitra, you are a senior HR leader, amazing experience, you know, lovely multinational that you work with. So I'd like to hear from you. You know, in teams, conflicts is something that's very common. So despite difference of opinion and conflicts with the teams, what makes a team a high-performing team?
Great. Thanks, Sangeeta. And first of all, my compliments, to you. I've read the book, very practical, very easy to understand. So my compliments to you on writing this book. And it's a very, very relevant topic today, right? And I personally believe that, dealing with high performance needs both the mind and the heart, and the balance is important, right? Every high performance is about balancing contradictory variables. And that's the task of leaders. Now, of course, there are conflicts, right, in a high performing team. But I think what I've seen high performing teams do well is they have an overarching goal, or a mission or a vision that they all rally around, right? It's a goal, and I've seen that in PepsiCo as well, that, a few years ago we had, for example, 2 of our 5 objectives, were common to the entire organization. So there was, a vision, there was a rallying cry to the common objective. right? And the overarching goal helps to break silos, brings the team together to collaborate and win together. So if I win, you win. If I fail, you fail, right? So how do you bring together teams and break those silos? So a high performing team does that. Secondly, I do believe that a high performing team works on 60% agreement, but 100% commitment. Right, that's the principle that these teams follow. So everybody need not agree on everything, as long as they have an opportunity to put their voice forward. And once decided, they walk away from the room, may not agree to all things, but there is 100% commitment to what they've all agreed, right? That's what high performing teams do, and that's how they manage conflicts. Secondly, I do believe that high performance teams feed off its own energy. They don't need an external energy from outside, right? They fuel the energy within. Thirdly, high-performing teams do celebrate each other's achievements. It may be a small or a big achievement, but they, celebrate each other's successes. And lastly, I think a high-performing team is realistic, but not cynical. It takes setbacks in its stride, and therefore, very important, on this, they follow the principle of collective resilience, which is good for the entire team. So that's what I believe, that's what high-performing teams do.
So like Partha also mentioned on the importance of vision, and you have also said that, and I like the fact that, together everybody needs to celebrate and they agree to disagree on, whatever, and yet move ahead and, take setbacks on their stride. That's amazing. Over to you, Anil. Can you give him a mic? Okay.
Hello.
All right. So Anil, the chapter 1 in the book, it talks about the example of a budding musician. And you are an awesome musician, pianist, and an educator, more than anything. So according to you, how can a person maximize their talent for high performance?
Okay. First of all, congratulations, Sangeeta. I feel like, so you have Virender Sehwag and you have Rahul Dravid and you have Sachin Tendulkar. Everybody's finished batting. And then you're getting this guy who's a football player and coming and saying, how can you show me how to do batting after this? I also noticed that, the management jargon, because we often fail to mention that I'm an MBA. So I saw 3 P's here. You have a P for Partha, P for Prakash, P
Yes.
for Pavitra. And then at least one out of the 3 of them is going to Google me after this. So let me at least make my speech memorable. And everybody's saying all these wonderful things, right? About building a team a particular way and, conflict resolution. And these are all words we use very wonderfully. But actually, what the hell does all of this mean? Okay, so when you are dealing with yourself as so let me say I have 3 roles, right? So one is, of course, me, performer. That's the space,
Absolutely.
You have even crashed my concert, you know what I'm talking about. Then me as an educator, because I'm dealing both with children, about 377,000 children,
Wow.
not just a few children, because I run one of India's largest ventures for music education. But we are also in EdTech, so I'm also an entrepreneur in that space, and I'm a college professor. And that's the reason I don't have any hair left, right? Because I'm doing so many different things. Now, let me come to your question.
Can't hear him.
Yeah, we've lost him.
I'm coming back on. Okay.
Okay.
I hit hi and they cut screen off.
The screen is getting high seeing.
Yeah, see. So I think so I'll just ask the other speakers, am I audible? If you can just show me a thumbs up, am I audible? The other panelists,
Yeah.
you can hear me, right? Yeah. Okay. So as long as you can hear me, you don't have to see me. I would say you need to be high, meaning that you need to remain excited about your vision. Okay. And the world is forever trying to tell you that your vision could be done this way or that way. There are always people coming in and telling me how I can run my business better, right? And at the end of all of that, you still need to be high. I'm going to posit that as point number 1. It's not about talent, business, ellame. All of this comes into that. The second thing I would say is building success structures, right? Who are your success structures? Who are the people around you who manage to keep you going at your highest potential? And I think that is as true for a musician or a performer as it is true for a business leader, as it is true for education, as it is true for anyone. I think I would say that's the second thing. And the third thing that comes from an individual space, but it is also true for the collective spaces. We need to set our metrics right. Too often, people say things like be successful. What can you accomplish? How do you achieve more? None of these things mean anything unless the metrics are correctly specified to the domain you're in, right? Which is why I said, if you send a football player into a cricket pitch with all the best batsmen in the country here, right? This is what I'm going to say. What is the metric? Right? I think this would be my answer to your question.
Absolutely. And I totally resonate with you because being a finance person, metrics is something that's so important for us. So yes, thank you. So that was the round one on high performance. Let's move to the round two. And this is going to be a little bit of a tidbit on the book. So Partha, I'm very curious to know what your thoughts are about the book, Get High.
Thank you. It's a very nice book, Sumesh. Sorry, Sangeeta. Only because you are standing in front of me. Otherwise, I would have said it's great. Okay. One of the things that I liked about the book, and I will kind of say, this is the daily work management of the, for a great leader that you can have. And why do I say that? If you look at the quality, Japan quality way, that there is policy and then there is daily work management. This lays down as a daily value. You can take this and it's a workbook. You can use it to plot and then get on to saying, how do we want? Whatever I said as vision, passion, tension, which your good friend said, sitting there, pooed in one sense, said, listen to my music. I know how to do hair raising experience. And I'm just joking, okay? But what basically this book does is it takes and puts a daily work management into the art of leadership and how to get high performance done, okay? Prakash, I really liked your example of getting the things done, which is once I set up, when I went to export, handling international business, I said, we are selling all of 500 tractors outside India. And they asked me, what is your target? I said 50,000. They all looked at me as a madman. Okay. So over the next 3 years, the team got that 50,000, So once you kind of think about them that impossible is nothing, then they kind of make it happen. Did I know how will it happen? I have no, absolutely no idea. And Sangeeta, coming back to your book, I was just trying to catch up and said, this is what it allows you to do. Overcome, will you have fear when I say 50,000? You will be laughed out of the room. Yeah. So, but what basically that it takes that risk, take that focus. Yeah. This brings it together very nicely.
Great. Thank you, Partha, for those lovely words. Prakash, over to you. I know you have already endorsed the book and I love your quote on whatever you have said. So I'm going to ask you a slightly different question. So although the book is mainly on coaching and you are a leadership coach yourself, so what makes it important to have an external coach, especially for leaders wanting high performance? What is your take there? You're on mute.
Sorry. You should always be careful. Never ask a pest control person why you should not have cockroaches in your house. So, trying to ask a leadership coach why you should get a leadership coach is always a dangerous one. So I'd probably say, hey, I don't think it's so much about saying, why do you need an external coach? What I like about the book is really the fact that, hey, everybody wants to get better. Everyone wants to reach their fullest potential. For most of us, and I like the point that was made earlier, that really success is about doing justice to your ability, doing justice to your potential, rather than saying, did I do better than someone else, or did I kind of, get some other external measure of success. So if you want to be as good as you can be, I think a lot of what's in the book is very helpful. It can help you to kind of answer some simple questions that you pose to yourself, perhaps create a roadmap for yourself about how can I get better. As you grow as a leader, it sometimes becomes difficult to hear other voices. Very early in our careers, we get a lot of feedback. You'll have friends telling you what you're doing well, what you're not doing well. Because you're keen to get better, you're quick to ask other people, what should I do differently? What am I doing wrong? But as you start getting higher up the organization, as you start becoming a little more successful, people aren't telling you what you need to hear. And I think in those moments, it becomes helpful to perhaps have someone, and that could be an external coach, it could be a mentor. And some of us are lucky, we are married, we don't even need any of those things. You'll have someone telling you what do you need to do differently, where are you probably going wrong. And I think that is an important element of your success journey. It doesn't have to be an external coach. It just needs to be someone who will tell you, who will hold up a mirror and tell you what it looks like. You need someone who will tell you things you don't want to hear, but you must hear. I think that's really the role that an external coach can play.
Find the blind spots so that one can overcome that. Right. Awesome. So, Pavitra, this book has a lot to do with HR, and you are a senior HR leader. So, what is your take on the book? And if you were to summarize it, how would that be?
So, Sangeeta, first of all, I hope there's no echo. There is. Better now? I think there's still an echo.
Yeah. No.
Let me try again. Is it okay? Technology at times. I think it worked now.
It does. It does. Go for it.
Okay, let me go for it before we get this again. So, Sangeeta, first of all, as I mentioned earlier to you as well, very simply put, very, very practical concepts. Storytelling is a great format, and you've given us a number of frameworks to think about. For me, my personal takeaways, and for me, there were 6 personal takeaways that I took back from the book after reading it. The first was, you talk about being your own competition, right? And Prakash, you just mentioned that, right? It's about you competing with yourself and setting your own benchmarks, not really, looking at what the others are doing, but it's your own benchmark that you're setting, right? And Sangeeta, you say it beautifully in the book, for driving high performance, your desire to strive for the better and the keenness of your interest are both very important, right? So for me, that was really a very important takeaway. The second was the whole concept of awareness and mindfulness, right? And that's so true and real today, right? Being conscious of what you're doing, and pausing and checking. As leaders, we very often, don't take a step back, pause and reflect. So I think, again, a very important concept, and equally a very important concept that you talk about in the same length is about making sure that you, remove all the clutter. And you talk about mind chatter, right? How do you remove the mind chatter? The third concept that I liked in your book was really the concept of worthfulness. What is the return on time investment, right? Very, very powerful concept. The fourth, very important and relevant again in today's time, is energy management, and I've seen high performance leaders do that. They bring in energy to work every day, to the teams, to the discussions, right? And I always, see good leaders first putting the oxygen mask, on themselves before giving it to the others. So you have to manage stress by managing your energy. So again, a very important concept. The fifth was really about fear of failure, or being judged, that can derail high performers. And again, you talk about a beautiful concept of grit, and how you can use that to manage fears. And I will tie it back to the early concept that you use in your book about continuous improvement. Focus on evolving to the next better version of yourself, right? And failures are a part and parcel of your growing up. And lastly, the most important and my all-time favorite is about leveraging or playing to your strengths. As someone said, you grow most when you are already strong. So really very powerful nuggets. And for me, I resonated with these 6.
Thank you so much, Pavitra. That was wonderful. You just said it so beautifully, and all the major concepts of the book you have covered. Thank you, lovely. Anil, over to you. What are your views on the book?
So if we were writing an exam, I would have sat next to Pavitra and just copied all the answers off her because she's just sort of summarized everything. I think you've already heard all the best insights, Sangeeta. I think you should use this mic. I think you've heard all the best insights. So I'm going to tell you what I did not like in the book, so that it's a little interesting, because these people have all given you the 100 out of 100 answers. So let me be the football player once again. What I did not like about the book is that it's too short. Okay, I wish you had kept it. I wish we'd gone a little deeper, because you have touched upon the theme of consistency, and I think that's an extremely important point. So I was trying my best with my musician brain to see what is the point that somebody like Mr. Parthasarathy and Prakash have missed, that Pavitra has already finished, that what can I say which is different. Okay, consistency is something that you mentioned as very key. I wish you had gone a little deeper into that, because I think that's going to be, I want you to create a next sequel, and I want you to call it Get Higher. Okay. In fact, you've already got Iyer, now Get Higher. Okay. And please make the next book on the theme of consistency, because I think consistency is one very important thing. Everybody's been talking about echo chambers. Funny enough, we're talking about echo chambers at a time when it's echoing. I think the point that Prakash made, and I'd like to reiterate that I think this is true of every domain once again, that we get too used to listening to the sound of our own voice. And we don't, and the moment success sees you in any form, right? Again, depending on your metric, it's not just that you stop listening to other people, you actively discourage other people from talking. And I've seen the most intelligent, most accomplished people often find very weird, indirect ways of discouraging other people. You know, there'll be some telltale phrases like, you know, oh, that's very interesting, but I'd still like to do it this way, right? That kind of thing. And you're actually patronizing the other person, despite the fact that the person is actually doing you a favor by telling you something that's wrong. I liked an anecdote that you have again on energy. See, don't keep me after Pavitra. Yeah. Next round, I'm going to start with me and then go back to these people. Okay. So on energy, which is why I'm going back to my point on saying hi, Sangeeta, is that energy and conserving it for the right things becomes very crucial. I'm glad you've spoken about it. As I said, I would like you to make a sequel to this. I would like you to spell out for high performers in things other than organizations. If you can actually create something for individuals, something for institutions other than companies, the idea of performance and what it should mean, I would really like to see that come out of you.
Will do. Thanks.
Before you go on to the next question, Prakash, in your book, would that rate as an A- to an A answer? Whatever I've just said.
You know, my rating is always linked to the initial of the person. Yeah. So for you, it has to be an A. What can I do?
Anil, can I say something? It was C sharp.
With other people, but now my competition is on because Pavitra's got an A+.
Awesome. So, you know, probably like you said, I'm going to start off with you on the next round, Anil. And since you spoke about energy management, now this round is on the keys of high performance, and energy management, like Pavitra said and you said, is one of the extremely important keys. So how relevant is it for an artist, you know, considering that you have an erratic schedule? How do you manage your energy? What is the secret behind? And, you know, probably the other budding people can learn from you.
Actually, my schedule is not erratic. I think the key to conserving energy is actually to have a very consistent routine. That's why I made the point about consistency. For example, what are the non-negotiables in your time? What are the non-negotiables in your life? So for me, my practice time is non-negotiable. It's 5:30 to 7:30 in the morning. Wherever I am in the world, wherever I'm going, whatever time zone, it's 5:30 to 7:30 in the morning. And God forbid anybody who walks across my path at that point of time, because it is non-negotiable. It is my time for myself and my craft, right? Even if I have nothing to play that day, and if I just sit gazing at the instrument, it is still my time. It is something that I keep as very key. And because that routine, Sangeeta, has not changed for anything, right? I think has given me everything I want in terms of routine, because the moment you set one routine, everything else automatically clocks. And many of us, and I'll just say one more thing and I'll stop, but I think we also need to know when to get out of conversations, right? And I don't mean only day-to-day conversations, but even in professional interactions. you need to know the point of no return in that conversation where it's beginning to suck your energy. And you must figure out very easy tactics to get out of that conversation. I
Like
think
a
these
stop
two are,
loss.
you have to like, thank you so much. I wish you all the best. And I love you very much, but I love myself more. And you need to move on. You know, I think that pause point and moving on, I think is very important for energy.
So I really appreciate your point on consistency, both on the book and that you're practicing. So it is just that the reason I kept this book as a crisp one was my What the Finance was slightly longer book, and people said it's too long. But the funny thing, I found it more challenging to write a shorter book. Yes. So that was, and this actually book went through a couple of rounds of iteration. All right. So Pavitra. Yes. So one of the keys in the book, like you mentioned, is the availability quotient, and then the focus aspect of it. So what sort of impact do you think it has on teams' productivity?
Yeah, I think availability quotient is an important definition, and thank you for calling that out. Right, it's essentially about effort in time available. And I'm glad you picked up time as a variable, because it is the most available but least understood of the variables at work. And today we need the agility, speed at work, and the availability index actually captures it beautifully well. And in my mind, it works at two levels, right? At an individual level and at an organization level. Now, at an individual level, you are the master of your time, and there's no reason for you not to invest all the time to get the availability index up, right? And it's all about discipline. And Sangeeta, you've mentioned it, right? Again, another phrase that you use, blissfully disciplined, right? And it is about, and I've seen leaders, who have a very high availability index. It is all about being disciplined. It's about, I've seen them maintain a diary. It's about valuing time. It's about conducting meetings, starting the meetings on time, ending the meetings on time. It's about taking pride in meeting deadlines, right? Equally, on the flip side, I've seen, leaders and managers procrastinating, right? And losing time. So it's really about thinking about things from start to finish, and the steps needed for each. So in a sense, it's really about taking tasks into bite-sized activities and then completing it, right? So that's at an individual level. At an org level, again, that's a very important aspect. And I think, with this current time that we're seeing, where we are all, in a digital world, I think it's really important to evaluate the availability quotient, right? How can you up the availability quotient? And in my mind, I think it's really important to revisit all the processes and see how we can really shave off time and really up the quotient, because some processes could slow us down, and therefore important to really look at this concept, which is a beautiful concept in terms of both at an individual level and at an org level, and it can have huge impact on teams and their productivity, of course.
I loved the aspect on the process. And in fact, just I think last week I had posted on LinkedIn on the process. I was just trying out one of the traditional South Indian sweets, which normally takes 3 to 4 hours to do. And then somehow I did something as an instant, and I think by 20 minutes or so, it was done. And I was like, wow, and it tasted just the same. So and I realized there's a way that every process, the time can be shrunk. So thanks for pointing out on the process, Pavitra. Prakash, over to you. So like I think Pavitra mentioned, the book talks about worthfulness. So how can a leader ensure the team's actions are worthy so that, the leader is able to drive the team towards high performance?
Yeah, I think it was an interesting concept that you put across in the book, this whole idea of, trying to figure out whether it's worth doing, is it worth your time? And I think you've got something like a return on time invested. So I think that's an interesting thought, and maybe what we all need to do. And I think the first thing would be for leaders also to perhaps demonstrate that they value other people's time. And I loved it when Pavitra says, for example, start meetings on time, end meetings on time. I think it's just a simple thing. It's suggesting that, look, I respect your time and it's not about me. Sometimes leaders can make the mistake of thinking it's fashionable. They will only enter the meeting room after the secretaries told them for the 5th time that everybody is now in the room, because after all, I'm Lord and Master. I will only come in after everybody else is in. That's a stupid way to lead. And I think it's showing very little respect for yourself and for your team. So I'd strongly endorse respecting other people's time. I also think we've got to get out of this habit of wanting more of everything. And sometimes we are, I remember very early in my career as a brand manager, I had a boss who then said something to me which has stayed with me. It's a wonderful line. And he says, you've got to ask yourself, is the juice worth the squeeze? And I think sometimes leaders don't get it, and they will squeeze everything out to get that one extra data point. And they'll have teams wondering, why are we wasting our time doing this? So I think it's a good idea to be saying, hey, respect other people's time and ask yourself, there is time being put into it. Is it worth the while? Is it really something that they should be doing? And perhaps, when we talk about roles, and in organizations, you try and get role clarity, and, everybody wants to, so what's my role, accountabilities, et cetera, et cetera. I think it's a good idea to also try and define for yourself, what will I not do? And, even from a leader's standpoint, we all have these to-do lists. And maybe it's a good idea to have a not to-do list, because that will then ensure that your time is spent doing your high impact items, doing things that you should be doing and no one else can do. That's a good way to ensure that everything that people in the organization are doing is worth their time and worth the organization. I think maybe a good way to do it.
I love the concept of what not to do here. Very right, we always have to do this. But do's will be a great way to remind ourselves. Thanks for that, Prakash. Partha, the chapter 9 in the book talks about overcoming fear. So from a business perspective, during times like these, there's so much of fear and uncertainty. Nobody knows how the business is being headed. So how can a business balance between taking risk and being cautious?
Thank you. I just first want to go in a little bit on what you said about the small or the conciseness of the book. Okay, because what you got. And I was reminded about the Abraham Lincoln letter which he sent. He sent a very long letter to his mother, maybe his father, but I think mother. And then he wrote at the end, I wrote a very long letter because I didn't have enough time. So it takes a lot to be concise, and that is also time for the audience. So you're not only conscious of the time that you're taking to write the book, you're making it easier on the audience. So to that extent, if you have done that, my compliments. But that is not about fear. That's about praise. Okay. But about fear. Fear, I think you've nicely defined this concept of grit, and I like it. Yeah. Gear up mentally, rise to stand for your team, idealize the perfect outcome or dream the perfect outcome, and thrive on your ideas, abundance, implementation. So I like this concept. I think in a very, very simple thing, for me, two things are very important. When I don't feel fear, I'm going to fail. Very simple. It comes to me. If I don't have butterflies in my stomach, I'm not conscious enough. That's how I look as a leader. That's how I think we'll look as a team. So fear is an important facet for success. It's not a thing to be avoided. It's a thing to be cultivated. Only thing is you should not be overcome by the fear should not consume you. But it's an important element. The knot in the stomach is an important element. That's the first part. The two is that when you have fear, I have often found it very easy expressing. On the day when Indira Gandhi was assassinated, and I was in Mumbai. I was not staying in Mumbai that time. I was in Delhi, and had come to Mumbai on that day, and there was no way to get out anywhere. The whole city was under siege, and the only taxi I found, I went and sat there, and then I tapped the driver and said, "Mujhe bahut dar lag raha hai. I'm feeling very unsafe and very afraid." The driver turned and said, "Mujhe bhi bahut dar lag raha hai." So we all can share that, and that allows us to share. So when you share with team the fear that you feel or the uncertainty you feel, you don't become weak. You make the team stronger. So that's the two parts that I learned over my thing, and I've always found my subordinates to be much better than me in every aspect. And that's what is a great thing for us to happen to create teams. But I had two mantras, and this mantra I have used over a period of time as a group CFO. I've used it in my business, and it called fire bullets before firing the cannonball. So basically, when you don't know what is going to be the right one. So why don't you do some experiment, do pilots, do things which help you. And the second one, which is another concept, but these are all concepts borrowed from management books. I'm just trying to put it what I believed as a mantra, and these conveyed. The second one is called nail it before you scale it. So don't allow your team to go and I will implement the whole plan, and then you know what, I've lost 50 crores. No. So tell them, said, can you nail this concept in a smaller one where you spend 2 crores? I'm giving you 1 crore, 1 lakh. You show me that this works in a smaller one, and then you scale. And the difference between two is you fire bullets when you don't know which of the solution were. And you nail it is the concept when you use it, when you know what the solution is, you don't know how to implement it. Then you use this nail it and scale it concept. So if you do this, I think the fear as a way to, to be used as a way to succeed by being calibrated about your response. Back to you, Sangeeta.
Lovely. I loved both your mantras, Partha. Thanks for that. Let's move to round 3, which is on the core of high performance. So, Prakash, let's start with you this time, because this has about the leadership, and a leader has to lead by example. So how can a leader demonstrate high performance so that the team can follow suit? So what would be your views for a leader to demonstrate high performance?
So I'd probably take a contrarian view over there. As leaders, I don't think you need to put undue pressure on yourself to keep saying, oh my goodness, I must be at the peak of my game. I must be a high performer. I must do it better than everyone else. You don't need to do that. I like the way Partha put it. Most of your subordinates actually are far better, doing a great job. So maybe what good leaders do is to find other people doing a great job and then talk about them and highlight what they are doing, and actually go around appreciating the great work that's happening across the spectrum. Because what can happen to a leader otherwise is you can start thinking that the great performance and high work, is all what you are doing. It's the challenges, oh my goodness, you have no idea. As a CEO, I have such big challenges and look how I'm tackling them. Don't go there, because, for that sales guy, having to sell one more tractor in that market perhaps is a bigger challenge for him, and his whole world and his dream of paying that EMI is probably linked to his selling that one tractor more. And for him, that's big. So find people who are doing a great job of whatever it is they're doing, recognize that. And I think as far as you're concerned, stay true to yourself. Never expect someone to do something you would not do yourself. Okay. If you're holding people up to a certain standard, I think you need to adhere to it. You need to have signed up for it. You cannot have one set of rules for other people and another set of rules for yourself. If you do that, and if you're true to yourself, I think you'll be a better leader, because you'll be at peace with what's happening in your organization and not constantly turning the spotlight on yourself and saying, look, everyone, look, I'm doing such a great job. You've got to be turning the lights away from yourself and saying, hey, look, everyone, I think there's some fantastic work happening in that corner of our organization. I think we should all stand up and applaud that. That's what good leaders would do.
Amazing point you brought out, Prakash. In fact, I had done a leadership workshop for the CXO club here, and it was, different CXOs had participated in it. And one of the key things that came out as a takeaway was the appreciation. That's exactly what you said. Leaders, many times, they themselves realize that they do not acknowledge and appreciate the team for the great work done. I mean, forget it to appreciating others, but even on a one-on-one basis, many times leaders tend to take it for granted and, do not appreciate, despite the fact that a lot of these subordinates do a phenomenal job. So thanks for highlighting that. Pavitra, let's go to Anil before going to Pavitra, so that Anil doesn't complain now. All right, so one of the high performance keys mentioned in the book is to step out of the comfort zone. We all know magic happens outside the comfort zone. So from your experience, how does one step out of the comfort zone to showcase their talent? Because many people have a lot of fear and phobia when it comes to performing arts. So what would be your advice?
I know Prakash said that he was being contrarian, but I'm actually agreeing with the contrarian. which is, I think you need to not fear being vulnerable. Let me re-articulate that. I think you should never be afraid of exposing your vulnerability. Even if you are, one of the things that I've found is that, and I'll give you a specific example. Sikil Gurucharan and myself performed in South Korea to a crowd that does not speak English. Forget about Tamil and all that. I mean, they don't speak English. So we mostly we are relying on very bad dumb charades to communicate what we are doing. God knows what they made out of those symbols. Good that we came back right intact. But one of the things is after that was over, and somebody, there was a newspaper conference, and they asked us, "So what was your experience?" The typical kind of questions. And I just told them, I said, this was one of the worst experiences of my life. And I'll tell you, I mean, obviously, when you say something like that, nobody is like expecting you to say something so politically incorrect. But I think one of the ways of breaking it down was to tell them that, look, I mean, for me, the process of art creation or music creation works when the audience is with me, right? It's all very well to say music is a universal language and all of those kinds of things. But the fact is that you knew that you were singing something or performing something that people did not understand. And because I made that comment to that newspaper thing, they invited me back on stage, made me explain all the pieces again, and then they interpreted it in Korean, and then we started making jokes with the audience, right? And this whole thing started with honesty, right? I think many of the times, as Prakash said, I think there's this unnecessary artificial standard that you're supposed to set as a communicator, as a leader. You're supposed to always be very smooth. Lord Ram, the point is, I think you need to be unafraid about your own vulnerability and expose that. And I think that totally opens up communication. This is my view.
Lovely. I think vulnerability is something very, very key. I mean, for anybody, nobody wants to expose their vulnerability, but I think you said it very well. Thanks, Anil. So, Pavitra, to you, how does one get recognized as a high performer in a corporate role? Because, sometimes your immediate boss may or may not acknowledge that you are a high performer or doing a great job. So despite that, how does one get that required attention in a huge corporate?
So I think, getting recognized in any sphere of life is important, right? Some of the things apply across the world, be it corporate, government, teaching, they're all similar. My mother was a professor, and I would see how she would prepare for a class, constantly learn new things, unlearn, relate to students differently, follow rules and principles, and take pride, in her college, right? If I apply the same, rules or principles to the corporate world, then it would be about, working with that kind of diligence and commitment, working with each other, collaborating, right? Being careful about how you use company resources, being positive and bringing that positivity, into your teams, into the organization, helping others succeed. And, I've always believed what high performers really do, and they get spotted, is when you're doing the right thing for the organization and keeping the organization first, that's the first principle, and taking tough stands, it is about doing the right thing for the organization. The second is, are you doing the right thing for your team? And then the third comes yourself, right? And I've seen individuals who've done that, and they could be, it's not about being popular, it's about standing for the right thing and doing the right things, right? Such individuals, such leaders do stand up, because, you are able to kind of, stand against the crowd and, bring some of these characteristics to people, and people notice that, right? People see that. I also want to talk about performance. Performance is also based on the context, right? Sometimes the context favors you and sometimes it doesn't. But having resilience to see through it is just as important, and good performers, high performers really, do that, right? They have the resilience, they're not constantly cribbing, right? They're doing the right things and they have the resilience. Things may not go right all the time or go the way they want it, right? But having the resilience to sail through it is what matters. And you get spotted because of that. And lastly, I think what Prakash mentioned is consistency, and results, right? Both are very important, and that again, gets you spotted, and seen in a very different light.
Beautiful, Pavitra. I think what you said is like, bang on, doing the right thing all the time. I think that's in the best interest of the organization and the team. Putting the team first, putting the organization first is the key. And also definitely the resilience to bounce back and, deliver consistently. Lovely. So let's move on to the round 5, which is the essence of high performance. And Pavitra, let's start with you this time. So the book talks about leveraging on the strengths, which you said was one of your favorite things on high performance. So what is the best way of bringing out the strengths of each individual in the team? Because there's no point in asking a fish to fly, right? The fish is good at swimming, so you make the fish to swim. So in a team, how does one get the best out of each individual and play it according to their strengths?
Yeah. See, I think, Prakash, Partha both mentioned, right? Every individual has strengths and areas of improvement. And I've seen most developed organizations actually focus on correcting weaknesses, which I think is really a mistake, and I think we all agree that I think it's about, looking and focusing on strengths to bring out the best in people. And, and I think a lot of us don't do that with ourselves in terms of believing in our strengths, and also don't do that as we are navigating our teams as well, right? We always end up coaching and saying, okay, here is where the gap is, this is what you need to improve, versus, recognizing people and prodding them and talking about, hey, use your strengths, right? And I think for that, what is very important is people must feel comfortable, and that comfort comes when they feel that they have a voice in the room or a seat on the table. Okay. And that is the role of leaders, to give the confidence to people. Okay. While individual performance, if individual performances are important, the ability of leaders to focus on the individuals on a larger picture is equally important, right? I think we generally take a very myopic view on individuals and, their performances, but how often do we really have conversations with them beyond work, really trying to understand what is that individual all about, right? Because you just see them in, in the 9 to 5 or 6 or 8 hours, right? But really understanding who that individual is, going beyond, having those connections and understanding what those strengths are, and how do you make sure that you leverage those. I think it comes from knowing your team, knowing those people. And especially it is important in today's context, with a lot of stress, with a lot of apprehensions that people are going through. How do you make sure that you dial this up, right? Really go beyond the individual and really understand what are those circumstances. I think that can really harness, the individual's potential and leverage those strengths.
Yes, like, the banks have KYC, and I say the leaders should follow KYT, which is know your teams. Yeah, lovely, lovely. That was a great point. Partha, I have 2 questions for you. So the first one is, like mentioned in the book, focus is one of the keys for high performance. So where should an ordinary business focus to transform themselves into a high performing business? After you answer this, I'll move to the next one.
One of the things, before I just start on that, on focus, one of the things you should remember that practice makes a man perfect. I'm sorry, I'm not saying women, but it will still make the same point. Yeah. Practice makes a man perfect. Imperfect practice makes a man perfectly imperfect. So please remember that sometimes this thing about consistency, focus, a contrarian view is, be careful that you are not following one thing which will lead to your, being, and after that you can't correct. If that, backhand is like a badminton player becomes bad, then do what he may. After that, it is for his life he's formed like that. So be conscious of this. Okay. So that's an important thing that I heard some of the remarks, and I thought I must point this out. Now coming to focus, I told you that I used a 5-letter word to define. I said 5 words, 5-letter words, and the first one I said was yield. It was a ruthless focus on ROE. So what does that mean? Sometimes I said focus on something which gives return to your stakeholders, and therefore if you kind of focus on that, and this was for the times that we are in. So if you focus on it, it means be mean and be lean. And by mean, you can mean transformational cost management. I have set a target, 50% margin of safety, 50% ROC. So somebody says 50% ROC seems very high. I said, yep, But just think about that. If even if my business falls 50%, I still don't make loss. What am I ensuring? I'm ensuring return to shareholder. But think of the bigger thing. I'm ensuring I don't have to fire my employees. I don't have to give, grief to my suppliers. So it's a very important thing, that focus, to say, how do I keep that focus of having flexibility in this? And be lean, which is saying bring variability. And I'm now talking in the context of ROE. Impair without despair. Yeah. Don't hesitate to return capital when there is a need. Don't keep everything to yourself. So if it's an organization, I speak, these are the kind of things you should look at. And when you're talking about focus. So if it's ROE, focus ruthlessly on ROE and develop all these facets. The other one, which is for me a ruthless focus, is Prime. And Prime is basically compliance as a rule book and governance as gospel. And why it is so important is because when you find such organization, the people are inspired to work for you. That I've worked for a company like this, which thinks so high on governance, and therefore zero tolerance on non-compliance. And then you become a defender of corporate governance and increases aura. So whenever I kind of come to, when I joined M&M, one of the first things they asked me, why did you join M&M from Xerox? Okay, I was working for Xerox before that, and a global MNC. I said, I so much like an Indian company which has global governance standards. And I think even today, that brings me back to office very happy. Yeah. So I think it is important to have these two. So this is the on focus, that two parts to it.
Lovely governance that you said, it's the key, especially during current times, and one must definitely not compromise on the ethics and integrity as well. Awesome. The second question I want to follow up, Partha, is what would be your advice for the MSME business during these trying times if they still want to be a high performing business?
Okay. So this is the most tough one for me, because I always said advice is made up of two words: advice. Okay. So I'm sorry to all those guys who are listening to it. Please, okay. But there are some things that I want to think of them to think about. Today, if I write a book, I will not write a book called Build to Last. I would write a book called Build to Adapt. So MSME, I'm just saying you are very vulnerable because of the very basic way that structure is there. But you are also the growth engine. So would you write yourself a book called Build to Adapt, and write what it means for you to adapt to this scenario? The second one I would ask them to think of is an acronym called NICE. Okay, all these are things I've written, so I'm just speaking from there. NICE is, ICE means only those companies will survive which are innovative in the face of two challenges that we face today: climate change and experiential commerce. So whenever you think of yourself as SMSC business, would you like to think of self as innovative companies on the face of climate change and experiential commerce? And when you define this is the new normal you will follow, then you become NICE. So be a nice company, or try to be a nice company in that acronym. Okay. Third one is learn the ABC of technology. A is for automation and AI, B is for blockchain, and C is for quantum computing. Yeah, computing quantum. Okay, so learn this ABC to build into a small business. You don't have to understand this. You don't have to learn it. There are so many startups who will help you with this, and leverage those in order to do. And I have understood there are 5 reasons why you will succeed in any business. First, do you have a platform? Are you creating a platform? Do you have the financing that it requires to get the job done in your business? Is there a societal pull in what you're doing? Fourth, is there scale in what you're doing? And fourth is the customer delighted by the experience you provide? And if you have these 5, I think that small scale or that MSME is slated for success, especially if he's adaptable, ABC, and thinks of himself as a nice business.
That was lovely, Partha. I just loved your answers. 5, I think, very important and vital points for all MSMEs. Build to adapt is something like so valuable that you rightly pointed out. And of course, even the ABC aspect was like very nice. It's also very important. Automation, blockchain, and the cloud computing that you said. Great. Thank you so much. Anil, over to you. How should a person prioritize and nurture their talent, especially when they are pressed for time? Because these days, everybody says, I'm busy, I don't have time. So if they have some, special talents, how can they prioritize that? Find time to practice, like, you've had the discipline, like morning you said you set aside.
I think, again, we have to be very careful about what we define by talent. I think a talent for people is a talent. A talent for
Whatever
conversations is a
talent
talent.
each one is passionate
So
about.
I think if you're passionate about something, you're going to find time for it. I've found that people who say they don't have time are actually not being very efficient about how they're managing it, right? So if you're truly, I mean, these are almost rhetorical, right? That if you truly believe in something, if you're truly passionate about something, you will find the time for it. And I actually believe that 24 hours is a lot, right? And I think everybody in this panel are people who have had days when they felt 24 hours is not enough, and have come past that point where they're now able to say 24 hours is just about enough, where I can manage everything that I really want to accomplish. So I think it's, and I mean, and that too at a time like this, right? I think Pavitra made that point earlier about how the digital scenario has made us multiply available, right? So meetings are actually starting and ending on time. It's almost as if the whole world has become group captain Vijay Kumar, and meetings start and end on time, right? And because I'm telling you, having a meeting in Bangalore, for example, when you say 11 o'clock, typically means 12:30 in the afternoon, because traffic would have taken you that long. And now, thanks to Zoom or whatever else we are on, I mean, things are actually getting efficient. So I think you can find the time. There's actually, I'm sure you've read this, you're an analyst yourself, that there's a surge in people going back to their passions and things like that. So I think, and I would say now is the time, please seize it, use it as an opportunity. In fact, I was part of an earlier discussion at a management meet where they said, what are your productivity parameters during the pandemic? And I said, say that fast 5 times. That would be a tongue twister, because what does that even mean? But I would take that to mean that you're actually, this is the time to have the best quality of life. If you really, really invert this problem on its head and look at the fact that your time is now multiply available. I think Pavitra made that point. I hope I'm not paraphrasing her wrong, but now is probably the time to seize it.
Wonderful, wonderful. That's a very nice. Now is the time. So be in the present moment and, make as much as you can make hay while sun shines. Great. Thanks, Anil, for that. We have the last question to you, Prakash. How can a leader be more aware and curtail having biased views? Because, it's easy to be judgmental and take biases, and that comes in the way of high performance of both the leadership and the team. So how can a leader curtail himself from being biased?
Yeah, I think a good measure of self-awareness would help. So if you're just aware of yourself and aware of your surroundings, I think you'll probably be in a better place to ensure that you're not kind of looking at your biases too strongly. And a good way to be self-aware, I think, is to stop focusing on yourself. So if you're in a meeting, stop worrying about what are people thinking about you. Stop thinking you're the performer. Try and think of other people. Try and think for them. Try and worry about what's in it for them. How can I help them succeed? What could I do which will make them feel happy? And if you start thinking like that, I think you'll be in a good starting point. To ensure you don't have biases, maybe a couple of things will help. I think the first would be to say, expect good things. And I know it sounds cliche to say that you should think positively, but I think just this whole idea of looking for that half full glass, of looking for what's good in other people. And, I think, a lot of us have talked about this thing about leveraging strengths and looking at what's good about other people. I think become the kind of leader who's looking at other people and saying, wow, I think there's something good over here. So I think get that mindset, expect good will happen. Expect people to deliver good results. Okay. I think the minute you start doing that, you're not constantly looking to say, where did they go wrong? What have they done wrong? What's the missing piece? We can sometimes get caught up in this whole thing about, I'm so smart. I could catch that problem so quickly. There were 99 things which were good, but we pride ourselves in being able to find that one thing which was not good. So maybe get out of that. I think also believe that everybody wants to do well. Everybody wants to get better, and give people a chance to get better. And sometimes we can be terribly contemptuous of this, and we can start saying, we are such good judges of people. Oh, that fellow, I've known him for so long. Or, I've worked with her for so many years. I know what she can do and I know what she cannot do. Now, that's a very poor way to look at your own assets. So I think give people the benefit of doubt, give them a chance to do well. And maybe the last one there, and I know vulnerability was talked about a lot, and Anil did mention that. And I think that's a great way to do it. So become the kind of leader who's quick to say, I don't know. There is no premium on being we think that business management and leadership is the game of fastest finger first, and the leader must be able to press the button and say, I got the answer right. It is not. I think you've got to be willing to say, I don't know. And if you're good at saying, I don't know, you will learn. You will be open to listening to answers. Absolutely. Even if you know what you think is right or what you thought was right, you'll probably hear another point of view. You'll hear an additional nuance, which can help you to take the better decisions, I think. So just being able to say, I don't know, or tell me more. Oh, wow, I never thought of that. I think these are signs of a strong leader and not signs of a weak leader.
Lovely, lovely. I think the fact that you said putting others first, and I'm not a know-it-all person, and the fact that the leader is being vulnerable to admit that, it calls for a lot of courage, and that's really nice. Thanks a lot for sharing that with us, Prakash. And I think I'm done with my round of questions, and I think there are a lot of questions on social media. So which I would request group captain to please come up on stage and read that out for us. And while you do that, I have also started, I would like to, nurture this community of high performers. So on LinkedIn, I have, just opened this group. It's called Get High. So please feel free to join, and please do share your nuggets, your learnings, in general on high performance and how we can, help each other grow and nurture together and be high performers. So thank you. Over to you, group captain.
Thank you. I think, as usual, fascinating evening. We have got over 1,100 viewers are watching this program on all social media.
Wow.
And the questions are come. I think we got next 10 minutes. We'll try and squeeze in as many questions as possible. The first question is from one of your YouTube viewers. How do you identify your coach, and when do you think that you need a coach? At what moment of your life you get this feeling that I need a coach?
Okay, I have answered this in the book as well. Yes. So
I think you can briefly tell them so that you can make them buy the book.
Sure. So you get a coach when you think that you have a challenge which you want to overcome, because a coach partners with you, kindles your thoughts, and help you get the best solution to what you have. So like Prakash said, a coach holds the mirror for you, and a coach is like an accountability partner. So if you want, if you have a challenge, you have the solution to it as well. So the coach is one. Okay, traditionally, what does a coach mean? A coach is a mode of transport. It helps to take you from one place to another. And that's exactly what an external coach does as well. Takes you from where you are to where you want to be.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Sumesh, can I just add one small point?
Yes.
A coach
Please.
is every facet of life. Your first coach is your mom and your dad, and so on. So, when you're not coach, mein sankoch kabhi nahi karna. So always have a coach.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Here's a question to you, Mr. Patra, again. Mr. Patra, since you came on the line, I'll share this question to you. You said you must strike yourself of fear yourself so that you will bring the best in you. They say sometimes the fear in you blanks your mind, actually. You may not be able to take a very right decision. So how do you balance between the thing, fear yourself, at the same time psych yourself? At times, how do you avoid, the mind gets blank when you get fear?
Yeah. When you have fear, and then it can bring paralysis, or it can bring the butterflies in the stomach to make you better. How you are saying, how do I avoid the paralysis? And I have one very simple question. Don't keep it to yourself. When you fear, share. Show that vulnerability which everyone talked about. And when you share your fear, sometimes they are unfounded. Sometimes they are very well founded. So you can find it is like putting a risk matrix. Your fear you express, then your countermeasures, the balance of the fear is a smaller fear. It will still be there. You fear of failure. if you are going to play a match, is there not fear of losing? So stop playing the match is a good way of avoiding failure. But if you want to play, then you have to face the failure. So fear has to be there. Let it not consume you. So share, think, Sindanai say maname. So that will help you do many of these kind of things.
Thank you. Any other panelists would like to add on to this, Prakash or Pavitra? Prakash, yes, please.
No. I've been so impressed by all those, 5-letter word and 4-letter word that Partha has been giving that I thought I must add to Partha's collection over here. Partha, fear is actually an acronym for false expectations appearing real.
Yeah.
So maybe that's something for you to use next time.
Yeah. I'll certainly, that good nuance, Prakash, and I will add that too.
Thank you. Here's a question from Mr. Venkateshwaran. He says, if leaders take the role of coaches, will it not lead to high performance? If the leaders take the role of coaches, will it not lead to high performance or otherwise?
Yes, definitely. A leader can be a coach, a leader can be a mentor, the leader can mold the team and, drive them to high performance. Definitely, yes.
But a leader needs a coach too.
Yes, everyone needs a coach. When people like Steve Jobs, Sundar Pichai, Larry Page, everybody has a coach. I think each one of us needs a coach.
Great, sir.
When coach is, any leader who is not a coach is very vulnerable.
Yes, yes, rightly said.
There's also a question.
You must also hear what Shane Warne once said, and he said, every team needs a coach to take them from the hotel to the stadium.
There's a question.
I thought for a moment, Prakash, you'll tell us, what coach stands for, COACH.
Pavitra, I've already started working on that. I was just trying to think of what the expansion will be. I'll come up with it before Partha gets there.
So, you also mentioned about SMEs, actually. So, if you want to give one advice, especially to SMEs on terms of financial discipline, what will be your advice to SMEs? Because I see them quite a bit. What's happening today is in terms of the financial support what the government is giving, how they're not able to avail them because of they are not following certain thing which you should have done, like SME rating, quite thing. What is one or two advice you would like to really pass it down to? That's all. SMEs we always consider the backbone of the country. I also request other panelists also share the views because we really focus quite a bit of work on SMEs at MMA.
I will use the CFO hat for this. First, remember, cash is not just king; it's the emperor. Everything. So focus on cash rather than focusing on anything. So if you are financially, that's one thing. And second is laid out something which said break-even point and ROC. If you focus on these two and break it up, and instead of this jargon, if I just say input less input later, more output sooner. So if you use things like general common sense and say I'm going to manage this business, you will be financially more prudent. And always focus on case. That's why all Marwadis, all Chettiars, everyone, all that, everything is in the head. They first know how to, they only say cash. So everything else comes. So that's my only advice. Rest, I would like to learn.
Anybody else to add, sir? Okay, otherwise more on the next question. There's a question from one of our Facebook viewers, Arunachalam. What benefit do we get from coaching our top performers? They already are producing results. So shouldn't we focus on the people who are not performing as well?
So I think everybody has the potential. So it is up to the leader or, who are the coach, whatever, to identify the potential, tap the potential and ensure that they are able to maximize it and, thereby deliver best results. So either you can coach your own team or, however, the idea is to uplift them and elevate them and ensure that the best in them comes out.
Sangeeta, can I add to this?
Yes, please.
I'm the most useless panelist, so I'm still going to say this. I think different people need different types of coaching. I think we shouldn't always think that coaching is only about getting high performance.
Absolutely.
And I think that itself becomes too much of pressure to keep bearing. I often find that people at the top are extremely lonely. And it's like what somebody else said about mirroring, right? So you need someone to talk to who's not, who's
Yes.
unafraid to tell you that you may be thinking wrong, you may be thinking, something which is not necessarily true, or false expectations are becoming reality, or whatever that somebody
Yeah.
said. I think coaching cannot be defined as one thing. I think that's the thing.
True,
Yes.
sir.
Yeah,
Absolutely
you
true.
have different types of coaches in different areas, so whichever works. Yeah.
I know that's why Tiger Woods has got 6 coaches, and one of the presidents of a country has got another 3 coaches. I think coaching is not limited to non-performance. Coaching is for enhancing your performance. I think it's a very, very excellent answer, sir. Now, there's also a question as far as the high performance is concerned. How much you think empathy is very, very important role does it play in high performance? Actually, empathy.
Sorry, if I were to say, I said this before, stealing, pulling or feeling के सिवा life में है क्या? So if you are going to work in an organization without empathy and having your team's back, there is nothing which is performance which is possible. So empathy just is not important, is the most important thing.
Pavitra, as a HR professional, what's your views on empathy? Because that is the thing what is really required today with what's happening around due to pandemic.
Yeah, no, and like I mentioned in my earlier answer on strengths, right? It is about knowing, putting yourself in the other person's shoes, and really understanding where is this person coming from, right? What are the barriers? What are the barriers that that is being faced by this person, which is what is not allowing him to be a high performer, right? Or giving his best to the organization or at work, right? I think if you don't have that empathy and you don't wear that empathy cap, you're missing out on a big thing. So I think empathy is key, and especially in today's world where you're not doing those personal connections, right? And I think group captain said that as you opened the speech today, it's all about connections, right? And people are wanting to connect and talk to each other, and empathy plays a very important role in a digital environment, because you're just seeing each other on Zooms, that's all, right? So how do you make sure that you're having those open conversations, getting to know the person deeper and differently, and therefore being a partner in helping the person climb up those barriers? So it is all about empathy, and very much more important in today's world.
Mr. Prakash, I would like to add to this. Okay, I know you have written quite a bit on this.
I think it's been articulated pretty well. I probably just want to add that it's not as if it's only for high performance or for coaches or for leaders. I think empathy is a very, very strong value, something that everyone should try and inculcate, have. It'll make you a better person. Forget being a better leader. It'll just make you a better person, I think so.
Agree.
True. I think Mr. Manikandan says Ratan Tata said layoff during the pandemic shows lack of empathy from Indian young, though it's relevant to mention here. I know the recent amendment what has come into the labor code where the layoff is gone from 100 to 300. Do you think it's really a dichotomy of this factor where it is going to be seriously affecting the empathy when you say that the layoff, the numbers are gone? How do you balance between the organizational function vis-a-vis the empathies?
Okay, I'll go on this. Okay. You see, first and foremost is you should not confuse sympathy and empathy. Yeah, it is not sympathy that we are talking about, it's empathy. It's a deep understanding of the underlying reason and doing what is best for the team or organization. Let me, as a doctor, when he sees gangrene set in and he cuts a toe or a feet, is he not being empathic? He's saving a life, but he has to do something in order to save. So whenever we are saying layoffs, we can't say layoff is non-empathic or not. It is in what context are we talking about? And if the organization is better off doing a slight bit of right sizing, but it gives huge more positives, then it is the right action at that point of time, I would say, as a contrarian. And disagreeing with Ratan Tata is very difficult for me because I adore him. He's my role model. But in this particular thing, I said we have to do what is right for the business at that point. But I would like to ask this one as empathy. This is a scene in empathy. When you then see growth, do you take a pause and say, oh, by the way, we did retrain somebody earlier. Is there any way we can give them the chance in this round when we are going to recruit new? That would show empathy to my mind in a much bigger way. I'll stop here. I mean, there will be other comments on it, but I just gave a perspective.
I'll just add one more thing. Absolutely echo that. I just want to add one more thing, that it's about how you do it, right? You can still do the same layoff if you have to do it. If that's the choice that you have, you're forced to make from an organization holistic perspective. But it's about how you do it, right? I still remember, I'd seen a few months ago the CEO of Airbnb, right? The note that he had written to all his employees, right? The tonality of the note, that yes, it's always painful, nobody wants to do it, but if you have to do it, it's about how you do it, and how do you treat people with respect, even if you have to take these tough calls, right? So it's about the emotions, it's about how you do it. I think that's important.
It's
I actually want to just piggyback on Pavitra a little bit. Also, we are a culture which is also getting very heavily into tokenism, right? We say empathy, and I find it, for example, hilarious when companies are sending out these things. We're going to have a group think session where we're going to discuss our issues. It's like, what, till 3:30? Let me focus on productivity and profits. At 3:31, now let me talk about my personal problems. I don't think it works that way. I think too many people are getting into checkboxing. We say, let's listen. By just doing this as a body language, I'm not actually showing you that I'm listening. I think listening, like everything else, is a good habit.
It's a very important trait.
In the era of Arnab Goswami, it's very difficult to cultivate that habit because everybody wants to scream the loudest. But I would say that we have to get out of tokenism and get into real listening.
great, sir. Two last questions before we close. We got another 2-3 minutes to go. One, first, now the working from home has become a norm today. And I think the LinkedIn and many surveys says it is really impacting the mindfulness of the people already declared till April next year they are going to be working from home with some of the international companies. So under these circumstances, how do you ensure the productivity and output of the people who work from home without compromising on their mindfulness and their own mental health? Anybody can take this question. Prakash, it's your subject.
Sometimes we can all think that productivity is something that we have to monitor and get out. And, if that person is working from home, then damn, the person must be wasting his time or her time and doing personal work. I think that's not a great way to look at it. I think we've got to give credit to people and say that, hey, it's a tough ask trying to juggle two worlds, particularly, I think, for half of our society, which is actually increasingly contributing at work. But stereotypes would have us believe that they must continue to do a lot of the work at home. So I think we should not try and say, how do I ensure productivity, as much as saying, how can I support them to be able to do what they need to do? So that's taking the focus away from thinking, oh, they are shirking, they will not work. How can I find this? Can I create a rule which says that there will be a light which will come on and we are measuring how many of you are sitting in front of your laptop for 8 hours in a day? That's not a good way to be productive. I think what we all need to do is to try and say, hey, it's a tough ask. The world is changing, but you know what? You're saving time. You don't have to commute anymore. You probably are able to juggle two worlds a little bit better. Tell me, what can I do to support you and ensure that you are able to give off your best? I think that mindset will help us to ensure that people are productive, people find work-life balance, and people keep their sanity around them.
Yes, to add on to what Prakash said, beautifully he said it. I think trust plays a very key, crucial role. So once there is enough trust with the teams, and if the outcomes are there, then I think I'm sure nobody will like if somebody's breathing behind their backs. So as long as the output is there, the delivered results are there, and that bonding and the trust is there with the team, I think that makes a lot of difference.
One last question from the audience here, sir. How the coaches coach for themselves? What are the criteria they look at it?
Yeah. As I said, everybody needs a coach, including me, including you. So we have a coach community. So we coach each other. So I think everybody needs to coach if you want to grow and excel in whatever you do. So that's my take.
True. As a coach, you should know how to identify your own coach. Very, very good answer. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. We have come to the end of session today. Thanks to our distinguished author for the book, Sangeeta, Shankaran, Sumesh, and all the panelists who have joined us from different part of the country. Parthasarathy joined us from Mumbai, Pavitra Singh from Delhi. Pavitra is the Chief Human Resources Officer, Pepsi, and Prakash Iyer, I'm quite sure, joining us from Pune, and Anil Srinivasan joined us in Chennai here. And thanks so much. And as a token of our appreciation, and also all the thank the viewers who are watching this program. More than 1,100 people watching, that shows the interest in each one of you. On theme of the subject is how to coach yourself. That clearly shows that each one of you want to be a high performer. As a token of our appreciation, we know we will not be able to come and give it to you. There, we on your behalf, we present more than about 300 face masks. So what we do, our team volunteers go around and on your behalf, we present this to the people who really in need of them. Our team from MMA go to a couple of NGOs and do to a couple of areas which really need to be taught on the social distancing and present them the mask them so that they follow this. How we don't do that. Thank you so much for agreeing to our thing to present the mask on your behalf. Thank you so much. Thanks all the viewers.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Group Captain and MMA. And I think the masks is a brilliant idea. So congratulations. And again, I'd like to remind the viewers who joined late about the two contests. One is the best post about today's program on social media. Please tag me. I'm Sangeeta Sumesh on LinkedIn, and please tag Madras Management Association. The best person gets a prize. And also on the book, whatever is your favorite quote, please post that as well. Tag me, tag Get High, and I'd love to hear from all of you.
Thank you. And as I committed, we try and bring you to the MMA Management Center, keeping the thing social distancing. So you don't have to worry about work from home. You can come here, relax yourself, learn some good talks, and you have some excellent social networking here because we had taken a lot of precautions and it has worked out so successfully. I think maybe one or two trials will be able to bring in some outstanding speakers as we move forward. We are now will be on and offline because all the time we have viewers from all over the world and speakers from all over the world, so that we can bring the best of the speakers to come and speak to you. Till we meet again, thank you so much for joining. Bye bye. Good night. Stay safe, stay healthy, and keep social distancing. Thanks to each one of the panelists once again for joining us this evening, sir. Bye bye.
Thank you, and good night, everybody.
Thank you so much. Special thanks to you, Partha, Pavitra, Prakash, and Anil. Thank you so much. It was wonderful, fruitful discussion and very enlightening. I'm sure people are all a lot more enriched. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye-bye.